Individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today. Former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years.
When FBI agents stormed through the gates of Terry Rozier's luxury Florida mansion at dawn on October 23, 2025, they weren't expecting what they found hidden behind a false wall in the basement. Inside a temperature-controlled vault, investigators discovered something that would make the entire case explode into what federal prosecutors are now calling the biggest sports corruption scandal in American history. Stacks of unmarked cryptocurrency wallets, encrypted. Hard drives containing thousands of messages between players and mob associates, and most shocking of all, a ledger documenting every single rigged game, fake injury, and manipulated outcome dating back years. The moment agents laid eyes on the evidence, their faces reportedly went completely pale, realizing the entire integrity of professional basketball had been compromised at a level nobody imagined possible. The investigation that led to this moment had been building for over 2 years, but it all came crashing down on October 23, 2025, when the FBI executed coordinated raids across 11 states. Federal agents arrested more than 30 people. What they're calling Operation Nothing But Bet, a massive takedown targeting NBA players, coaches, and organized crime figures involved in illegal gambling and game manipulation. FBI Director Kash Patel stood at a press conference that morning and laid it out straight. This wasn't just about some friendly bets gone wrong. This was organized crime infiltrating professional wealth. Basketball had been compromised at a level nobody imagined possible. The investigation that led to this moment had been building for over 2 years, but it all came crashing down on October 10, 2025, when the FBI executed coordinated raids across 11 states. Federal agents arrested more than 30 people in what they're calling Operation Nothing But Bet, a massive takedown targeting NBA players, coaches, and organized crime figures involved in illegal gambling and game manipulation. FBI Director Kash Patel stood at a press conference that morning and laid it out straight. This wasn't just about some friendly bets gone wrong. This was organized crime, infiltrating professional basketball at every level. The morning started with agents hitting multiple properties simultaneously. Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier was arrested at a hotel in Orlando, Florida, where he was staying for an away game. Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups was taken into custody at his expensive home in Oregon, and former NBA player Damon Jones was picked up as well. These weren't no-name guys either. We're talking about a current all-star caliber player, a Hall of Fame coach, and a well-known former player who'd been around the league for years. The scale of the operation was insane. FBI Director Patel said they coordinated arrests across 11 different states, involving over 30 individuals. This wasn't just basketball players getting caught placing bets on their phones. This was a full-blown criminal system enterprise with connections to 4 major Mafia families. The charges were serious too: wire fraud conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, operation of illegal gambling businesses, and even robbery and extortion under the Hobbs Act. When federal prosecutors use words like mind-boggling to describe the money involved, you know it's not just a few $1,000s we're talking about. Terry Rozier's attorney tried to spin it like his client was being railroaded, saying prosecutors were going for a photo op by arresting him at 6 a.m. instead of letting him self-surrender. But here's the thing, the evidence against these guys was already stacking up before the arrests even happened. The NBA had actually looked into Rozier back in 2023 when betting companies flagged suspicious activity around his performance in a game, but they didn't find enough to do anything about it. Turns out the feds were building a much bigger case the whole time. The reaction from the basketball world was immediate. The NBA put Rozier and Billups on indefinite leave within hours of the arrests. Both guys had been cornerstones of their organizations. Rozier was averaging over 10 points a game for the Heat, and Billups was leading the Trail Blazers as their head coach. Now they're both facing federal charges that could put them away for years if convicted. The league released a statement saying they were cooperating fully with federal authorities, but you could tell they were scrambling to figure out how deep this thing really went. While the sports betting stuff was bad enough, prosecutors revealed a second operation that was somehow even more twisted. Chauncey Billups, along with Damon Jones and dozens of others, had allegedly been involved in rigged, underground poker games that were straight out of a movie. These weren't just regular card games, they were using high-tech equipment to cheat. Wealthy victims out of millions, the setup was genius in how elaborate it was. Prosecutors said the ring used Billups and other former NBA players as what they called face cards, basically famous people who would attract high-roller gamblers to exclusive poker games in places like Manhattan, Las Vegas, Miami, and the Hamptons. Rich people would show up thinking they were getting the chance to play cards with NBA legends, but the whole thing was rigged from the start. The technology they used was absolutely wild. Federal prosecutors detailed how the cheating team employed rigged, shuffling machines that were secretly modified to read every card in the deck. These machines would scan the cards and predict which player at the table had the best hand, then relay that information through interstate wires to someone off-site. That person would then communicate via cell phone to what they called the quarterback or driver, basically the main cheater at the table, who would use secret signals to tell other members of the cheating team what cards everyone had. But it gets even crazier. They also used X-ray tables that could see through the backs of cards, and some members of the team allegedly wore special contact lenses that could identify marked cards. This was some Ocean's 11 type stuff, except it was actually real and they were stealing from people who thought they were just playing poker with celebrities. The whole operation generated at least $7.15 million in fraudulent winnings. Since April 2019, according to prosecutors. That's just what they could prove. The real number, that's just what they could prove. And here's the thing that really shows how organized this was. At one point during a game in Vegas in 2019, the orchestrators realized Billups was winning too many hands too obviously. They actually had to tell him to cool it because he was making the whole scam look too suspicious. Like they were worried their own cheating was working too well. The poker operation was connected to La Cosa Nostra, the actual Italian mafia. Federal prosecutors said 4 major fighter families were involved: the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese families. These crime families had already controlled illegal poker games around New York City, and they saw an opportunity to take it to the next level with the NBA players. One defendant named Anthony Didino, who they called the Wrestler, was identified as a member of the Genovese family and was accused of receiving proceeds from the games. The sports betting side of the operation was where things got really scary for NBA fans, because it meant games people were watching and betting on were straight up rigged. Federal prosecutors laid out 7 specific games between March 24, Terry Rozier, and a game on March 23, 2023, when he was playing for the Charlotte Hornets against the New Orleans Pelicans. According to the indictment, Rozier told his childhood friend De Niro Laster that he was going to pull himself out of the game early with a fake injury. This gave Laster and other members of the betting ring time to place massive bets on Rozier's under statistics, meaning they were betting he would score fewer points, get fewer rebounds, and have fewer assists than the betting lines predicted. And that's exactly what happened. Rozier played just 9 minutes and 34 seconds before leaving the game with what the team called foot discomfort. In that time, he scored 5 points, grabbed 4 rebounds, and had 2 assists, way below his season averages. The betting activity before that game was absolutely insane. In just 46 minutes before tip-off, there were 30 separate wagers from professional sports bettors totaling almost $14,000 on Rozier's unders. Multiple sportsbooks noticed something was wrong and actually shut down prop betting on his statistics. But by then, it was too late. The members of the ring placed more than $200,000 in total bets on Rozier's underperformance. And when he left the game early, as planned, they made tens of thousands of dollars in profits. Some of that money was allegedly delivered directly to Rozier's home afterwards. Another game that prosecutors highlighted happened the very next night on March 24, 2023. The Portland Trail Blazers were playing the Chicago Bulls, and someone described in the indictment as co-conspirator 8, a person who matches Chauncey Billups' exact 8. Description: allegedly told bettors that the Blazers would be tanking and that several of their best players wouldn't play. Sure enough, Damian Lillard, Jusuf Nurkic, Jerome Grant, and Anthony Simons all sat out. And the Blazers got destroyed by 28 points. The betting line moved significantly once people with insider knowledge started placing their bets, making it obvious to sportsbooks that something fishy was going on. The Lakers games were another major part of the scheme. Former NBA player Damon Jones, who was serving as an unofficial assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers, allegedly sold information about player injuries before games even happened. On February 9, 2023, before the Lakers played the Milwaukee Bucks, Jones texted a co-conspirator saying to get a big bet on Milwaukee before the information got out that a certain player was sitting. That player turned out to be LeBron James, who missed the game with a sore ankle and foot. The Lakers lost, and the bettors who had insider info from Jones cleaned up. What made this whole thing even more calculated was how they used personal relationships. Jones had been teammates with LeBron back when they both played for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he'd coached him too. That friendship and history gave Jones access to medical information and lineup decisions before they became public. LeBron wasn't aware Jones was using that information for gambling purposes. He's not accused of any wrongdoing, but it shows how the proposal conspirators were exploiting every connection they had. An Orlando Magic player who wasn't named in the indictment allegedly provided information to co-conspirators about an April 6, 2023 game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. This person told them that several of the Magic's top players would be sitting out before that information was announced publicly. One of the defendants, Marvez Fairley, who went by Vez online, placed an $11,000 bet on the Cavaliers to beat the point spread based on that tip. When the lineup changes were confirmed and the Cavs beat the Magic by 24 points, Fairley and his co-conspirator split the winnings. The Toronto Raptors games involving Jontay Porter were probably the most blatant examples of manipulation. Porter, who was already facing his own separate charges and got banned from the NBA for life, allegedly told co-conspirators exactly when he would exit games early with fake injuries. On January 26, 2024, and March 25, 2024. He agreed to do this specifically so bettors could place wagers on his underperformance. This information was passed through a network that included some of the same people charged in the new indictments. When Porter left those games early as planned, the bets paid off big time. What really elevated this from just a gambling scandal to a full-blown organized crime case was the involvement of multiple Mafia families. Federal prosecutors made it clear this wasn't just athletes making bad decisions. This was the entire country mob using NBA players as assets in a criminal enterprise. FBI Director Kash Patel specifically mentioned La Cosa Nostra during his press conference, and prosecutors detailed connections to 4 major families: Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese. The way it worked was actually pretty smart from a criminal standpoint. These Mafia families already controlled underground poker games and illegal gambling operations around New York City and other major cities. When they identified NBA players who were either in debt, looking to make extra money, or just willing to bend the rules, they brought them into the operation. The players would provide insider information about injuries, lineup decisions, and even intentionally alter their own performance, while the mob-connected bookmakers would take bets and distribute profits. One of the most disturbing aspects was how they recruited and pressured players. In at least one case involving Jontay Porter, prosecutors said conspirators actually threatened him to keep him in the scheme because of his pre-existing gambling debts. This wasn't just friends sharing tips. This was organized criminals using leverage and intimidation to force compliance. The indictment mentions how Porter owed money from his own gambling losses, and the people he owed used that debt to control him and make him manipulate his performance and gains. The mob families weren't just passive recipients of information either. They were actively involved in setting up the infrastructure for this whole operation. The rigged poker games, for example, required serious technical expertise and equipment. The modified shuffling machines, X-ray tables, and marked cards with special contact lenses didn't just appear out of nowhere. Organized crime networks have the resources and connections to acquire and deploy that kind of technology, without getting caught easily. Federal prosecutors also revealed that members of the families were directly receiving proceeds from both the poker games and the sports betting schemes. Defendants like Anthony Didino from the Genovese family and others from the Summer Gambino family were named specifically as people who were collecting money from the operations. This showed that the NBA connections weren't just peripheral to the mob's activities, they were core revenue generators being actively spending, managed, and protected. What made the investigation so complex was tracking how money moved through this network. Prosecutors said conspirators used multiple methods to hide their tracks, including cryptocurrency transfers, cash payments, and complicated money laundering schemes. In some cases, they used what they called straw bettors, people who would place bets on behalf of the main conspirators to avoid detection by sportsbooks that were monitoring for suspicious patterns. The scale of the mob's involvement also explained how the operation stayed hidden for so long. These families have decades of experience running illegal gambling operations and know how to avoid law enforcement scrutiny. They understand how to compartmentalize information, use cutouts to avoid direct connections, and intimidate potential witnesses. Without the extensive federal investigation that led to these arrests, this scheme could have kept running indefinitely. When news of the arrests broke, politicians immediately started calling for reforms. House Minority Leader Hakeem Al-Kash Jeffries gave a statement calling what happened an irreparable stain on professional sports. He and other lawmakers pushed for increased regulations on sports betting and stricter rules about who NBA players and coaches can interact with outside of team activities. The timing of this scandal was particularly bad for the NBA because the league had recently embraced sports betting as a major revenue source. Just a few years ago, the NBA was one of the biggest advocates for legalizing sports betting across the country. They partnered with multiple gambling companies, integrated betting odds into their broadcasts, and basically made wagering on games a central part of how fans engage with basketball. Now that relationship looks really problematic. Crisis communications expert Christopher Morse from Bryant University pointed out the hypocrisy of the league's betting position. He said you can't promote betting and prop bets across all your broadcasts and advertising, then act shocked when scandals like this emerge. The NBA has these massive partnerships with companies like DraftKings and FanDuel, and they make millions from those deals. But those same partnerships created the infrastructure that made this insider betting scheme possible in the first place. Lawmakers are now talking about new legislation that would restrict how much contact athletes can have with people outside their organizations, especially around medical information and game planning. The idea is that if players and coaches aren't allowed to share certain information even with friends and family, it becomes much harder for betting rings to operate. But enforcing something like that would be incredibly difficult and would represent a massive invasion of privacy for the players. The betting industry itself is trying to distance itself from the scandal. BetOnline, one of the major sports books, released a statement saying this is exactly why they cap prop bet limits at $100 to $500. Their brand manager, Gabe Mason, said the revelations were very disappointing and reinforced negative perceptions of sports betting. But critics pointed out that many other sports books don't have those same limits, and that's where most of the fraudulent money was being wagered. The NBA's own investigation into Terry Rozier back in 2023 is now being questioned by everyone. The league looked into the suspicious betting patterns around that March game against the Pelicans, but concluded there wasn't enough evidence to discipline him. They released a statement saying they didn't find a violation of NBA rules. But now federal prosecutors have detailed exactly how that game was rigged, and people are asking how the NBA missed it. Was their investigation not thorough enough? Or did they just not want to find anything because it would hurt the league's image? State gambling regulators are also facing pressure to explain how this scheme operated for so long without detection. Betting companies flagged unusual activity multiple times, but somehow nobody connected all the dots until the FBI got involved. U.S. Integrity, a firm contracted by the NBA to monitor suspicious betting activity, reportedly detected patterns involving Rozier and others back in 2023. But their alerts didn't lead to any meaningful action at the time. One of the most fascinating aspects of how this investigation developed was through detailed video analysis of the games in question. investigators and independent analysts started going through game footage frame by frame, looking for evidence of coordination between players and potential signals being sent to conspirators. The video breakdowns revealed some pretty suspicious patterns. In the Hornets-Pelicans game on March 23, 2023, when Terry Rozier left early with his supposed injury, analysts noticed he walked off the court without even talking to the team's medical staff first. For a professional athlete to pull themselves out of a game without going through normal protocols was weird enough that people started questioning whether the injury was real, even before the federal charges dropped. In the Trailblazers Bulls game the next night, where multiple Portland starters mysteriously sat out, video analysis showed some odd behavior on the bench. Players who were supposedly too injured to play were seen laughing and moving around normally during the game, not showing any signs of actual physical problems. Coaching decisions also seemed strange. The Blazers made substitutions that didn't match their usual patterns, almost like they were intentionally trying to lose. Analysts looked at the Lakers-Bucks game from February 2023, where LeBron James sat out, and noticed the timing of when the injury announcement came out versus when the betting line moved. There was a gap of several minutes where people with insider knowledge clearly started placing heavy bets on Milwaukee before the general public knew LeBron wasn't playing. That kind of line movement is a huge red flag for suspicious activity. The Orlando Magic game against Cleveland showed similar patterns. When several Magic starters were announced as out shortly before tip-off, the betting lines shifted dramatically within minutes. Video from the arena showed some of those players arriving at the game apparently healthy, only to be scratched from the lineup at the last second. That timing gave insiders a window to bet before casual fans even knew what was happening. Some independent sports betting analysts on YouTube and social media had been documenting these suspicious patterns for months before the arrests. They'd post videos breaking down specific plays and pointing out things that didn't make sense, like players who seemed to stop trying in the middle of games, or coaches making bizarre decisions that hurt their team's chances of winning. At the time, people dismissed them as conspiracy theorists, but turns out they were picking up on actual corruption. The video evidence became crucial for prosecutors building their case. They could show juries exactly what happened in AI. These games and demonstrate that the outcomes weren't just bad luck or poor performance, they were deliberately manipulated. Combined with the text messages and betting records, the video analysis painted a complete picture of how the scheme operated in real time. This scandal represents way more than just some athletes getting caught betting on games. What the FBI uncovered suggests that the corruption in professional basketball goes deeper than anyone publicly acknowledged. Federal prosecutors mentioned during their press conference that they believe the manipulation extends beyond just these 7 games they've charged. Those are just the ones they can prove right now with absolute certainty. Investigators discovered connections and communications that suggest this network has been operating for years, potentially affecting dozens of games that fans watched without knowing they were rigged. The charging documents reference ongoing investigations and hint at more indictments coming. When prosecutors use phrases like "the fraud is mind-boggling" and talk about hundreds of millions of dollars being involved, you know what they've revealed so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The connections between defendants revealed family relationships that enabled the scheme to spread. Court documents mentioned how some conspirators had relatives who worked within NBA organizations or had access to inside information through personal relationships with players. These family connections created pipelines for insider information to flow from locker rooms to betting networks, and it happened across multiple teams and cities simultaneously. Perhaps most troubling is evidence suggesting the manipulation extends to draft positioning and other league operations beyond just individual games. While prosecutors haven't fully detailed these allegations yet, references in the indictments to corruption that goes much further than publicly known hint at systemic problems affecting how the NBA operates at fundamental levels. If teams were manipulating outcomes to affect draft lottery positions or playoff seeding, that would mean even the structure of how teams build for the future has been compromised. The financial impact on legitimate sports bettors and gambling companies is also massive. Tens of millions of dollars in Bets were placed on games where insiders knew exactly what would happen. That means regular people who were betting in good faith were essentially throwing their money away because the games were rigged before they even started. Sportsbooks lost money too when these fraudulent bets paid out, though they've been mostly quiet about exact figures. The credibility hit the NBA is taking can't be overstated. Basketball is a sport that depends on fans believing the competition is real and fair. Once people start questioning whether the games they're watching are legitimate, everything falls apart. The league has tried to control the narrative by putting Rozier and Billups on leave and cooperating with investigators, but the damage is already done. Casual fans are now wondering how many other games were fixed, how many other players are involved, and whether they can trust what they're seeing on the court. So while the FBI raided those mansions and found evidence in Rozier's basement, the real discovery wasn't just about one player or one scheme. What they found was proof that organized crime had successfully infiltrated professional basketball at multiple levels, using players, coaches, and team personnel to manipulate games for profit. The encrypted regiment, messages, cryptocurrency wallets, and that infamous ledger documenting years of rigged games didn't just implicate 30-plus people in criminal activity. They exposed how fragile the integrity of professional sports really is when enough money is programmed. On the line. And based on what prosecutors are saying about ongoing investigations and additional charges coming, we probably haven't even scratched the surface of how deep this corruption really goes.